Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome back. Um, so today we have an interesting one. Sarah and I just thought we wanted to do something a little different, and this is a little different. So it's TCS versus a priest.
You may notice from our backgrounds that we are
Yes, yes.
prepared to discuss religion.
Yes. And this is he's an exorcist, I believe, actually,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? And so he's talking about the ways that people can, or the devil can get a foothold, right? So we'll see what he says. I'm guessing that now we just read the. I mean, this could be a really boring video. I don't know. We started reading, we thought, oh, that's kind of
Possible.
cool. Let's see, because we do often, because we're not religious. We are spirit. TCS is very spiritual. We're not
I
metaphysical.
would say so.
Yeah, we're not just metaphysical. That's not who we are. We're sort of this spiritual first, then metaphysical. And sometimes we agree and sometimes we don't with the church. So
We've been surprised before,
we
so
have.
maybe we'll agree. Who knows?
While I've got you here, before we start this, please like and subscribe if you have not already. And thank you for being here. All right, here we go.
What are the main ways that people give the devil a foothold in their life? So again, the truth is, if we're living out our faith as Catholics, praying and going to church, celebrating the sacraments, the devil's already on the run. We don't have anything to worry about. But when people don't live out their faith, then that does seem to be where the devil can try to enter in. So in the 15 years that I've done the ministry, there are countless ways that people play the devil's game. But I want to share with you 8 main ways that I have seen that people can open up a doorway to evil in their lives. And these are not in any particular order. So ties to the occult. The word occult comes from the Latin word occultus, meaning hidden or secret. It focuses on knowledge of the paranormal. Its basic root is that people want a glimpse into the future. It's associated with things like palm reading, mediums, playing with a Ouija board, tarot cards, going to see a psychic or a medium, the practice of yoga, Reiki, the use of crystals, the use of magic. All magic is inherently evil. And I don't mean illusions such as a card trick, but magic in the true sense of the word is inherently evil. There can be things like reading your horoscope. Again, things may seem like they're entertaining and fun, but that doesn't mean that the devil isn't using that in a very subtle way, just trying to get a foothold into our lives. I even mentioned the practice of knocking on wood. Don't raise your hand. Has anybody ever knocked on wood? Do you know where the practice comes from? It's a Druid practice believing that spirits live in the trees. So when you knock on wood, you're asking the spirit that lives in the tree to come to your aid and to grant your request. Now, if you've ever done that, I'm not saying you're possessed. So don't worry about that. But I just share that as an example of how things that have to do with the occult can become so mainstream that we don't even think about what they mean or what it is that we're doing. And then certainly the practice of witchcraft is also would fall under the heading of ties to the occult. So all of these practices are condemned because they're a form of idolatry that violates the first commandment, where God says, I am the Lord your God, you shall have no strange gods before me. So when people turn to the occult, they're looking for a substitute for God. We can even read in chapter 18 of the book of Deuteronomy, verses 10, 11, and 12. You must never practice black magic, be a fortune teller, witch, or sorcerer. You must never cast spells, ask ghosts or spirits for help, or consult the dead. Exorcists will tell you that psychics and mediums do not have the power that they claim to have. Either they know that it's the power of evil working through them, or they've been duped by the evil working through them in believing that the power resides with them. Again, no one knows the future but God himself. The devil is smart. He can use deductive reasoning. He can watch us and observe us. He can deduce what we might be thinking or how we may act. But again, that's pure conjecture. Only God himself knows the future. And people need to realize the devil cannot be used for our own benefit. Ultimately, the devil will always use us, and in the end, he wants our lives to be nothing but a jumble of broken bits and pieces.
So,
I did not expect this to be so extreme.
wow. Yeah. So some of it I agree with. I do,
For sure.
but there's a lot that I don't.
I'm very concerned because
Okay.
about 3 hours ago,
Huh?
I knocked on wood. And so did my mom. And so,
Oh boy.
uh-oh.
Oh boy. You asked for it now, Sarah.
I did. That tree spirit is coming after me.
So, and I want anyone out there, honestly, I'm not personally laughing at like Catholics for believing it. That's
No.
their belief system, and that's okay. I give a very wide berth to what you believe is what you believe, what I believe is what I believe. I do absolutely agree with the devil is not here for our benefit. Like asking the devil for
Right.
anything, whether you call it the devil, I don't typically call it that, but that low vibrational energy is never good, ever. And yes, it will use us. Manipulation hurts us. Absolutely. We've seen that a lot in what we do, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And yeah, the point about, you're never going to be able to use that kind of energy to your benefit.
Correct.
It's always going to come back and use you. And yeah, that's definitely accurate.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Without a doubt. No one knows the future. Absolutely.
Right.
I'm giving him that one too. We tell people that all the time. And if there's psychics watching this and you're screaming at us, I can tell. Sorry, but you're
it's just he's right. It's not possible. People have free will, and so the future, can be changing all the time.
Yes.
And when I think of a psychic, or when I call myself a psychic, I don't mean it in the way like I'm a fortune teller, like I can see what's going to happen in the future. It's more of being able to read the energy around us, that kind of a thing. It's definitely not divination,
No. And then there's divination. So now he lumps it all together in the occult. All of this stuff is part of the occult. I don't personally lump that all together. I think what we do as he calls them mediums with an N. So the word medium means in between, right? So we're the medium between the two, but he says with an N, medians. And that's,
I guess those are in between too.
What we do at TCS is different, that we don't do any witchcraft.
No.
When we do come up against witchcraft, it's always, what we see is always witchcraft gone wrong. It's people putting spells and hexes and curses on people to do harm. So we don't often see the nice side of witchcraft. And
no.
I know it's out there. You hear about people talking about they just enjoy that sort of earth ritual or whatever. And I've known some witches, but it's really, I stay away from it. I don't want anything to do with it other than when we have to go in and break spells and so forth.
Yeah, I do find it interesting. But Pam's right. Yeah, when we come across it, it's almost always negative witchcraft.
Yeah, it was not done with love.
Right.
It really wasn't. I find it interesting. Yoga?
I was gonna say, yeah, that's kind of a wild card in there, huh? It's just exercising,
That's
you know?
exercise, yes.
Yeah,
And they do talk about breathing into the body and grounding,
yeah.
and that one I really disagree with.
Yeah, that's a little crazy. And I will say, in my opinion, he does have some points here, but by lumping in stuff like yoga,
Yeah.
it's sort of degrading his point. It's diluting it, you know.
Yes, very much so. And meditation.
Right. That's an alarming thing to say, because
Yes.
meditation can take many different forms, you know.
So many. What we do is completely different than what other people do, but it's all
Yeah.
meditation in itself is not a harmful thing.
You might find yourself, I don't even know, coloring or painting, and it becomes, you kind of enter that sort of brain wave where you feel very very focused, and that can be meditative, it's all
Absolutely.
kinds of things. Yeah.
Yes. So I will say that so here's one difference, I guess. We believe that God is, we are all connected,
Mhm.
and we even have God within us. I mean, our soul is God, is spirit, is part of all things connected. And so when you're meditating, you're grounding, you're doing any of the work that certainly TCS does, it's all with God in mind.
Mhm.
We tend to use the word spirit instead of God. And it's within us. So they really sort of connect differently within that way.
I feel like he's speaking and thinking about God as a totally separate, in and of itself entity,
Yes.
And I could be wrong, but that's just what I'm getting from the way that he's speaking right now. Yeah.
And that's not the way we certainly see it. So, do I believe that, well, before I say what I'm going to say, tarot cards the same way, they're not inherently bad. It's just a deck of cards. It really is. And you're intuiting or just reading the cards, how they come out. With that said, one of the things here at TCS that we teach is to your intention, to preparing your space before you do anything. We don't just willy-nilly just come in and just start doing stuff, because you can call in darker things. You can call in inadvertently lower vibrational things. We've certainly met mediums who are not grounded. They're not really connected. They don't know where they're getting information from, and they can talk to earthies, something lower than that, things that are trying to manipulate them that are not healed spirits. So how you prepare yourself is really, really important.
Yeah, as with anything, you need to educate yourself before trying it. You need to know what you're doing. Don't go in there just flailing around, you know what I mean? Because yeah, no, the same with like a Ouija board, that the kind of things people always throw out there.
Yes.
Because yeah, there are for sure
absolutely
the lower vibrational entities out there that are tricky, really tricky.
Yes.
I mean, we've been tricked. So
absolutely. Yeah. And we know what the hell we're doing. So it happens. I mean, it's just, yeah. Yes. Thankfully, we do rely on God, and we do have the means to help situations and understand what's going on. But we're human too. The human part of us is what gets tricked.
Right.
Wow, that started off with a bang.
Certainly did. I was not expecting that.
No.
That degree of
woo! Yes, and we certainly hear, and I do differentiate TCS from a lot of that, different occults. witchcraft, readers, all sorts of.
Even psychics and mediums, because
Yes.
I kind of wish that we had a different word for what we do sometimes.
I do too. And I've never, well, we've thought about it. Like, what could we be called? We don't know.
Yeah, because that one, I don't disagree. There are a lot of either, kind of shady psychics and mediums, or psychics and mediums that don't know where they're getting their information. And if they don't, then it's not useful.
Yes.
In fact, can be dangerous.
Agreed. And especially lower vibrational entities, they can appear and look like a family member. They can sound like them. They can give you information that the family member might give you. So you really have to be careful. That's why we stress so badly, have good teachers, please. A lot of faith is a big part of TCS. Should we try number 2? First one was pretty exciting. We'll see what else.
Yeah, let's see what else is in store here.
A second way that one can open up a doorway to evil is through the entertainment industry. So movies, TV shows, literature, games, computer and IT gadgets. Children today are growing up in front of a screen that is leaving them in isolation and not in community. You ever go somewhere and there's a group of people, are they engaging with each other most of the time? Or most of us are just looking at our own device. So we're missing out on the sense of community. Jesus came and gave us the church. The church is a word that means community. The devil's goal would be to isolate us, where we just become a collection of individuals trapped in our own little worlds, living by those 3 guiding principles. You may do whatever you wish. Nobody has the right to command you, and you're the God of yourself. If you think about certain types of literature, they promote being a witch or a wizard as a position of power. Evil is presented as something good. The diabolic is not presented as something evil. Curses, spells, alchemy, necromancy are presented as things that are good. We need to realize that books on evil are catechetical in nature. They're trying to teach our young people a message, and it's certainly not a message that is consistent with a true and genuine relationship with God. And just think for a moment, especially within our public schools, what books can you find there? Books on magic and all that, but you will not be able to find a Bible. The Bible is banned, but books, literature that have to do with glorifying evil are more than welcome.
All right.
It started out somewhat reasonable, and then I was like, whoa, whoa.
Yes. One common theme that I kept getting through this whole thing is there's no personal responsibility here.
Right.
Like, what about the parents' responsibility? What about just, because he was talking about children most of the time, right?
Yeah, and also, in addition to personal responsibility, I don't think he's giving like the human mind the credence it deserves. People can hold fiction in their mind and not think it's real and not succumb to it,
Yes.
You're allowed to read fiction, and as regular, healthy, functioning people understand that this is fiction. It is something read for enjoyment.
Yes.
It's not something that's going to seep into your life. If I read or watch Star Wars or something, that's not going to somehow make me start worshiping aliens or, whatever. Yeah. He kind of took a little left turn there to me, because I agree. I think that it's messed up when people are always looking at their devices and not interacting with each other. Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
It's a constant battle with kids, for sure.
Yeah.
And not only evil that he's talking about, but also human evil can get in through those devices. If you have kids with no supervision. But when he went into the entertainment industry, I don't know about that.
Yeah. Now, do I think there's a lot of evil in the entertainment industry?
Well, yeah, that's
But that's not what he's talking about, I don't think.
no, I don't think
But
so
maybe he
either.
is, maybe with like sort of a cloaked thing that he was saying.
Maybe, yeah,
Um,
I could agree with that.
Yes. Like the kids being isolated and that sort of thing. Oftentimes kids that get very isolated like that come from a home where there's been trauma.
Yeah.
They have a lot of wounding. They don't have adults in their life who are protective of them and really love them and care about them and are, they don't have that in their life. And so that happens. If that's what he calls, if he's saying that's the devil, I mean, maybe
Right.
our verbiage is just wrong.
Yeah, I would have liked a definition at the
Yes.
beginning of the devil. Because it kind of seems like he's applying that name to a huge spectrum of negative things. But, maybe that's what he means. Maybe that is what he thinks. I don't know.
And one of the things that we talk about, I know at TCS a lot, is fear. We have love and we have fear. And then all the other emotions, are within those two dynamics. You want to put fear in someone, tell them if they read Harry Potter, tell a kid you read Harry Potter and the devil's going to come get you or whatever, whatever that.
Right. Yeah.
And what happened to kids being allowed to have their wonderful little imaginations?
Right. And their little escapism and, even adults have that. Like, there's really nothing wrong with that to a degree. Sometimes it's just fun. You mentioned trauma and then in an unsafe household, those poor kids, they're going to want an escape, and that device or that whatever becomes that escape for them. And of course that's not healthy, but it's understandable.
Yeah. Oh, and he said something about like things like of a diabolical nature isn't evil. Like that's what we're teaching our kids. Like, I don't think that's really what's happening.
Yeah.
But
I
haven't read all the books either. But
I have, yeah. No, that's not. I mean, it's not like you open Harry Potter or whatever, and like, you immediately become some kind of occultist or like start worshiping Satan. Yeah, no. Again, I just say it's fiction. Come on, it's just fiction.
Yeah, and it's okay to tell your children that.
Yeah,
like that you can't ride on a broom, right?
Right.
No, you can't. Whatever. Like,
right.
There's not this magical train out there that you can.
Like this is fun to think about, but let's just make sure we understand that it's not real. Yeah.
Yes. And let them build their imagination.
Absolutely.
Without fear.
Yeah.
Without that fear. Yeah.
Yeah.
That one went way left field for me.
It did. And I really like your point about fear, because all of this stuff that he's saying, and it seems like he's almost trying to introduce fear into his listeners.
Yeah.
And if anything's going to attract the more negative side of the spectrum, when you're talking about spirituality or entities or whatever, it's fear,
Yep.
So I just think, I find it a little off base.
Oof.
So I'm not sure about that. Maybe he's right. I've never heard of that before.
Of what?
The Bible being banned in public. So I didn't go to public school, so I might not know, but
I don't know. I know they don't, like, prayer is not in school, but I didn't know that the
right.
You're right.
I'm pretty sure you can have a Bible in a library,
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
Okay, ready for number 3? I don't know if I am or not, but let's try.
Yeah. Where can we go from here?
A third entry point would be a curse. A curse is the opposite of a blessing. If something is blessed, it's commended to God. If something is cursed, then it is commended to the devil or some evil spirit. So cursing someone is trying to do harm to them with the help of the devil or one of his demons. Curses are only effective if you're weak in your faith. We cannot control what another person does. They may wish us evil. They may be engaged in occult practices, trying to pass on curses and whatnot. We can't control them, but we can make sure that we're spiritually strong. You can think of Ephesians, putting on the armor of Christ. We think of Psalm 91. I need not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day. And why? Because we're protecting ourselves with God's grace. So again, curses are only effective if we're weak in our faith. If we believe we've been cursed, then the solution is for us to grow in our relationship with Christ.
Okay, so some of that I don't completely disagree with.
I'm a little confused
Uh-huh.
by what he means by a curse.
Yes.
Because it sounds like he's talking like witches and wizards, like cursing
Right,
you.
right.
You know, I suppose he just means somebody wishing you ill,
Yeah.
you know, but
Could
I don't
be
know.
meaning witchcraft. He just
Okay.
didn't
You think
specify.
you think it's literally a curse? Like literally someone is trying to curse you?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the way I took it.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that could definitely be it.
Yeah. Yes. And I do agree with, because I've always said, because the stronger your faith is,
Mhm.
the less likely curses can take hold. And I do believe that.
I agree. Yeah.
I absolutely believe that piece of it. I do believe a curse is the opposite of a blessing.
Sure.
That I agree with.
Mhm.
So not too much that I disagree, unless I didn't catch something that he said.
No, I think the gist of it, yeah, I agree. Obviously, he's a Catholic priest speaking to a Catholic audience, so he's
Yes.
gonna the language he uses is gonna be a little different. But yeah,
Yes.
I agree with the sentiment.
Yeah, yeah. I have a very good friend who is Christian. She is what, when I think of being a Christian person, I
Mhm.
think of Connie. She's non-judgmental. She's absolutely beautiful. She's this wonderful woman. We were in a gift shop one day and they had some statues of Buddha and, like, I don't know, Ganesh and whatever. And there
Mhm.
was these two women that were in there and they saw those and they and they ran out. And Connie's reaction was, how weak is your faith that you can't even stand next to a statue of a Buddha or whomever with
Right. You know,
fear?
yeah, and that's how I feel with like talking like kind of this guy a little bit is doing that,
Yes,
talking about other people's faith being so
yes,
dangerous and so
yes,
scary. And it's like, no, it's if you're strong in your faith, let others be strong in theirs. What's the
yes,
harm?
yes. For all I know, those ladies might have been Catholic. I don't
Who
know.
knows?
Now we're all afraid.
Who knows?
So, all right. Whoo, can we take another? Let's see. Here we go.
A fourth entry point is by being dedicated to a demon. Being dedicated to a demon. The church says that no one under the age of reason can bring evil upon himself. If someone under the age of reason is dealing with the demonic, then someone who has authority over them, such as a parent or a guardian, bears responsibility for that. What is the age of reason? The age of 7. It's when a child makes his or her first confession and also first Holy Communion. I'll give you an example. So one of the 40 exorcisms in Rome was a young lady who shared the story that when she was born, her mother dedicated her to Satan because her mother did not want her, attempted to abort her. The abortion was not successful. She was born. Her mother blamed God for giving her a child she did not want and said that she would get even with God by dedicating her daughter to Satan. And so for the first 12 years of her life, she went through all kinds of satanic rituals and abuses. When she was 12, she ran away from home, ended up on the streets of Rome, where when she turned 18, she found her way to the priest who was training me, and then he began to do the prayers of exorcism. The good news about this young lady is she's completely free. She went on to dedicate her life to God and is now a religious sister who dedicated her life to treating street children in the city of Rome.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful.
It's a great and powerful story because it reminds us that no one is ever lost to God's mercy and grace. If we want to be found, God will find us. We all have free will. but we have to want to be found. This young lady wanted to be found, and as a result, she experienced freedom. Even when someone is possessed, something of the person always remains free, and that which remains free can ask for the help of the church.
So, little difference on verbiage. First, that is a beautiful story, that this
Yeah,
poor girl who was absolutely abused and traumatized by her mother.
right.
Is that the
Now,
devil?
what's the difference between being dedicated to the devil or growing up in a home where you're not wanted? You know,
Right,
like
right.
both are going to cause trauma. Both are going to cause you to act out later on. Do we blame the devil or do we blame your parents for not
Yes,
parenting you?
yes, exactly.
I was going to ask you to pause. It's interesting to me. I did not know this, that they consider 7 to be the age of reason, because in a
Yeah.
lot of states, 7, it's like birth through 7, under the law, you cannot be held responsible
Oh,
for a crime. And then starting at age 8 and moving up to 14, it's like an increasing sort of scale. And then after that, you're fully responsible.
wow. I did not know that. Thank you, Miss Attorney.
You're welcome.
For all of you who don't know, Sarah is an attorney. If you didn't know then, what struck me at the age, because that at the age of 7, so 7 is a really big, that's a big year.
Yes.
Because even in our development, we're all feeling, we take in the world by the way it feels and how we feel until about age 7, when we start, that's kind of when we can start reasoning a little. I mean, our brain is not fully together.
Right. Cognition starts, logic starts,
yes.
That kind of, yeah, for sure.
Yes. That's why we do a lot of healing with people, and most of their trauma that we're healing, we take it all the way back, and it's almost always under the age of 7.
Definitely.
We're all just feeling, right? And that's an interesting about 7, what you say. Wow, I'm not even sure. The word found, I find that to be a really odd, if we want to be found by God, well, God knows me. God knows.
And I think this is the difference between a very stratified, very hierarchical religion and just sort of believing in a more like free sort of religion, like believing that God is everywhere versus believing that no, you don't have access to God unless you do this stuff,
Yes.
And that is why personally I don't necessarily agree with a lot of organized religion or high demand organized religion, because I agree it's not, you can't lose God.
Right. And I don't have to ask God to be found, or
you can't lose spirit, you can't lose God. It's always around you. So
now, as you bring that up, that also makes us TCS different than other, certainly the metaphysical and this sort of new agey thing, because that is so loosey-goosey. That's just,
yes.
It's way out there. We are not that, we are somewhere between the two. We have
agreed.
We absolutely believe that there are tenets of,
and we believe there are way things are, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So we are somewhere in between there, but it's not that, yeah. Interesting. Well, that was an interesting one. Okay. I mean, they're all pretty interesting, but yeah, I want to know his definition of the devil.
Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's using a very sort of amorphous kind of definition of the devil.
Amorphous.
Like squishy.
Squishy. I like that, a very squishy definition. Or, yes. All right, here we go. Next one.
Number 5, abuse, which creates emotional wounds that may cause a person to seek help from the wrong sources. One of the exorcisms that I've done recently was a 50-year-old woman who told me that growing up in Mexico, her father began to rape her at the age of 7. She's sharing a story with me and she's weeping, and she said it lasted for over a 5-year period.
Oh.
When she turned 12, her father then turned his attention to her younger sister. So she's sharing with me the story. She's crying and she looks at me and says, "Can you help me?" And I looked at her and said, "Jesus is going to help you." And as soon as I said that, her eyeballs turned green, the pupils became slanted like a serpent, and this voice came out of her mouth and said, "Who's he? He has no power over us."
Wow.
But the friend that had come with her literally leaped over the table to get away from her. This newly ordained priest, the associate pastor at this parish, fell to his knees and began rattling off Hail Marys like a machine gun. He was shaking so bad.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
Reminded me of my early days. I immediately got up, went over, put my hand on the head of the person, began to pray. The demon looked up at me with these green eyeballs and said, "You can't get rid of us. We've been here too long. You're not strong enough."
Oof.
And then I reached in my pocket and took out some holy water and blessed. And there was a shriek, and the demon collapsed to the ground and was begging me to stop praying and to stop using the holy water. We ended that session. Again, it's always important to prepare ahead of time before doing a true exorcism, the official rite. I need to prepare myself. I would celebrate Mass, spend time in prayer, go to confession, determine where the exorcism will take place, determine who else will be present. There's no such thing as exorcism tourism. Nobody's there out of a sense of curiosity. Other people that are present are there to pray. So a week later, I had arranged for a chapel for the exorcism to take place. We were all there and praying. Soon as we began praying, there's the green eyes again, the slanted pupils. The demon is laughing and mocking me. And 45 minutes into the prayer, I did the insufflation prayer. It's the invoking of the Holy Spirit. It's a part of the ritual where the exorcist will breathe on the face of the person calling on the Holy Spirit. It recalls Jesus breathing on his disciples and saying, "Receive the Holy Spirit." And when I went simply very softly, you would have thought that the person was hit with a hurricane force wind. The wind hit the person in the chair flew back, hit the wall, the person came up out of the chair, there was a scream, and they collapsed on the floor. And then myself and the other priests lifted the person up, and this lady is beaming as bright as the sun. And every manifestation of evil was completely gone. Again, it recalls the scripture accounts that the demons would shriek just before coming out of the person.
Do I believe him? Yes, yes, I do. As far as that situation of all of that happened.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Do I think abuse and the devil are like, no.
No. And
Not
also
every-
that's, I feel like that's kind of blaming the victim a little bit.
Right.
Just it's close enough that it made me uncomfortable, you know.
Yes, that piece did. For sure.
Yeah, it kind of seemed like those two pieces were separate because wow, that's an interesting, really interesting. I'd like to hear about his exorcism stories.
I would too. One thing, I used to take holy water with me when we used to do a lot more in-person stuff. I would always go to the Catholic Church and get holy water. You don't need it. That was one of the reasons I don't carry it anymore, is because we can do things now not needing that holy water, but it's
Really anything can be imbued with that same kind
Yes.
of like high vibrational love, positivity, that kind of thing that will help. But yeah, I
absolutely.
guess holy water's the classic
Yes,
example.
it is, right? Yeah, it is. And I just assumed him when the devil was saying, "You're not as powerful as me, you can't do anything." I just envisioned the priest going, "Oh, challenge accepted."
Right? Yeah. It kind of spooked me a little bit with just that quote, because I mean, not necessarily that like a demon fully possessing someone, but we've heard pretty nasty
Oh
entities
boy,
talk to us before, and it's similar. It's similar to that.
very
kind of-
similar. Yeah, absolutely. And they do talk that way. They believe it. And
Yeah.
they are trying to invoke fear. As soon as as soon as one of us gets scared, game over.
Yes.
They've got you.
Yeah.
It's really, yeah. So in our belief system, I'm not saying this is exactly what happened, but if we were to, like, that woman who was possessed, definitely sounds like she was. And I do want to say the Catholic Church, it takes a long time to get an exorcist to your home. You have
Yes.
to get psych evaluations. You have to have medical checkups. I mean, there's a lot of things.
It's very difficult. Yeah.
So by the time they get there, that person really is possessed.
Mhm.
But as humans, we have to invite them in. That's how they take a foothold. And one of the reasons that they choose, or they're drawn to, people who are abused, depressed, have mental issues, is because they're easily manipulated to the point where that poor person is just like, I just want help so badly. Yes.
They just want to be happy.
Yes.
And yeah.
Something comes along and promises you that, and they're so good at manipulating, you invite them in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But they have to be invited. They do. Now, that's kind of the difference between, then there's people who just get jumped, but that only lasts a few
That's,
minutes.
yeah.
That's
If you're jumped, it's kind of like not as good of a home for these things.
Right. And they can't stay there. Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's try number 6, huh?
A sixth entry point would be a life of habitual sin. We've lost the sense of sin in our world today. There's so much addictive behavior that people try to justify. God wants us to be perfect, but he does know that we will sin. And what does he want us to do? To own it. That's why Father Amorth used to say that a good confession is more powerful than an exorcism itself. Because when we confess our sins, we hand them over to God. And once we hand them over to God, the devil, as the accuser, can no longer use those against us. So a life of habitual sin.
So that was a quick one.
Saying that someone sins or something you're feeling guilty about is an inroad for manipulation. Sure. Yeah. Agreed. I don't necessarily like that he's equating addictive behavior and sin.
Right.
Yeah. That seems kind of like a outdated sort of thought.
I agree.
Yeah. There's two separate things. And it really, I'm sure he's meaning sin in the classical sense of the word, but when you think of anything that makes people feel bad or feel guilty or wrong, there's very few things that are bad in and of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And there definitely exist. But, a lot of times it's just the person feels, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm a bad person. And then that just it's just a road you go down.
One of the terms that we use here is own your shit. And that's what it's just like, own it. You did it, own up to it. And there is such a freeing piece to that. And to them, it's confess your sins. But I don't think everything is I don't think cussing is a sin either. Like,
no.
So they have a lot of things that they call sin that I don't agree with. But yeah, owning your shit.
Yeah.
Being honest about the things that you've done is beyond freeing. And yeah, it's
definitely.
So, all right, let's go to number 7.
A seventh entry point would be inviting a demon into your life. Seems to be a crazy notion. One of the exorcisms that I did in the Archdiocese of Indianapolis was a person who told me that they believed that a friend of theirs was possessed. So they went up to their friend, looked him in the eye, and said, "Whatever in you, I freely invite to come into me."
Yowza.
Misguided sense of charity. And no sooner did the words come out of her mouth that she said something came over her.
Yeah.
For 12 years, she exhibited demonic manifestations. When she made her way to the church, working with her, there were 7 demons that named themselves in her. Whenever somebody is genuinely possessed, there's usually a cluster of demons, and there's a hierarchy. One's always more powerful than others. When the angels fell, they fell from all 9 choirs, And so there is a hierarchy within the demonic world.
Mhm.
And
That's
if you
true.
recall the gospel accounts of people that are possessed, they always go back from, what do you have to do with us? Us. I know who you are. See, that goes from the singular to the plural. Again, when somebody is possessed, it's usually not a question of one demon, but multiple demons. And the most powerful demon is the last to go. So this particular demon told me its name was Leviathan, and that it wasn't going anywhere because it had been invited in. And since it had been invited in, it was making a claim on the life of this person. But again, using the prayers of the church, commanded the demon to return that which it had stolen, namely a person created in the image and likeness of God, who is now seeking to restore their life to God. In this particular account, I worked with this person for over a year. The very last meeting before the demon was cast out, we're in southern Indiana in a convent chapel. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. A good hour, isn't it? 3 o'clock, school bell rings. 400 school children are now pouring out into the parking lot right outside of the chapel window where we're praying. The demon begins to scream, begins to laugh uncontrollably, and says to me, "Stop praying. If you stop praying, I will stop screaming. But if you keep praying, I will keep screaming, because people will hear the screams. They're going to come in here and see what you're doing, and then you're going to have to stop anyway." And then I told the demon to obey me in all things, although an unworthy minister of Christ, to say the words, "Hail Mary, full of grace," and to leave immediately. The demon looked at me and laughed and said, "Grace of full," scrambled the words, would not say the name of our Blessed Mother, and then began to mock me. And then I commanded it to say the words in the order that I told it to say it again, and to leave immediately. This demon that had been speaking in this very deep, authoritative voice, then in a child's voice said, "Hail Mary, full of grace." There was a shriek, and all the manifestations ended quicker than you could snap your fingers. So she was set free. People ask me, what did I do afterwards? Did I do a holy hour? Did I pray the rosary? What did I do? I went to Dairy Queen and had a chocolate shake.
I was gonna say, go ahead and have a glass of wine.
It was
Definitely.
hot outside. I was drenched in sweat. I was tired. I had a 2-hour drive back to my parish. I walked into Dairy Queen. The place was packed. All kinds of people at the counter. And I said to myself, if these people knew where I just came from, I would be like Moses parting the Red Sea. They would get as far away from me as they could. I also think that would be a great commercial for Dairy Queen, by the way.
It's hilarious. They're just gonna go, that's funny. There's absolutely a hierarchy. We've seen it many a times. They send out their minions, their scouts. They have all kinds of, absolutely. We've seen that.
Very common. Very, very common.
Yes, yes. And he did say you have to invite them in.
Yeah, it's just not wise to go up to someone you
No.
think is
No.
possessed and say, "I invite you into me." Like that's
Yeah.
all. That's
Yes.
kind of stupid.
Yes, kind of stupid. And I do want to say it can be as small as, let's say you're playing with a Ouija board, and
Yeah.
or you, whatever, let's say you're writing even, whatever, and you get from that Ouija board or whatever, just let me help you, let me write, let me use your hand to write with, or let me help. No, that's it.
Yeah.
You're allowing them in. Just allowing them into a finger, your hand, you're allowing them in. So it's never.
And that's kind of common to try to get just like a small touch,
Yes.
just a very small touch. Yeah.
And then
Like,
maybe,
when they can
you start
control you.
writing beautiful, so you let down your defenses, and
Right.
they're very smart. And we do use Jesus often when they're really the really dark, deep, those really dark entities. And that's one thing I was just thinking with a priest. They are attuned to a very high vibration. That's how they can do the things that they do. Obviously, we have not gone through the priesthood, but we have also been attuned with a very high vibration. he would absolutely disagree. He would tell Sarah and I that we're out of our minds, that we're
Yeah.
possessed by the devil. I'm
Yes.
sure he would want to do an exorcism on us.
It's just like talking about instruments of like holy water or like a cross or something. It's what matters is the intention behind it.
Yes.
And if you want to attune yourself to that high vibration by becoming a Catholic or Christian priest, that's one way to do it. There's other ways to do it as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and the longer you do it, so it wasn't the longer you do it, the higher the vibration you can connect to, and you keep. I know that we do attunements all the time. We're constantly getting more after we learn, and it's really you learn first, and then you get the attunement. Like Spirit doesn't say, "Okay, I'm going to give you this attunement, and then I want you to learn how to do it." Do whatever. It's the other way around, but. Interesting. I like his story. I would love to hear more of his stories.
Same. Yeah, that's what I thought. I like the latter part of his video. It's very interesting.
Yes. And that would be an awesome DQ commercial. That would be hilarious. All right, last one. Let's go.
The very last example I will give you is broken relationships. We all deal with brokenness in our lives, but how we deal with it does seem to matter. Jesus in the gospel reading a few weeks ago, how many times should you forgive somebody who hurts you? 7 times? Not 7 times, but 77 times, meaning don't even count. And Peter says the number 7, which is the perfect number. During the time of Christ, you only had to forgive somebody 3 times. Peter probably thought he was going the extra mile, thinking maybe he's going to get a pat on the back, but he doesn't get a pat on the back. He's like, no, 77 times. So broken relationships. The best example is found in Scripture itself. Chapter 5 of Mark's Gospel, the story of the Gerasene demoniac. So there's a man possessed by legion, living in the tombs. Shackles won't even hold him, superhuman strength. And what did the demons say? We know who you are, the Holy One of God. Jesus commands the demons to be silent. They asked to go into the swine. How many swine were there? Does anyone remember or heard of?
Nope.
2,000. So how many demons was this man possessed by? They asked to go into the herd of 2,000. They race over the hillside and they drown in the lake. Most people stop reading the story, but what happens next is very profound. The man who's now free of legion wants to follow Jesus, but Jesus says to him, no. How often does Jesus tell someone not to follow him? He says, no, go home to your family. A man that was living amongst the dead, Jesus wants to put back amongst the living. And in the world of exorcism, it was the brokenness within the family that eventually brought about the demonic possession. So again, we all deal with brokenness, but rather than getting into bitterness and hatred and anger and revenge and all that ugliness, we should always seek forgiveness. Doesn't mean that it will be easy, doesn't mean that it will be instantaneous, but that's the path that we should always put ourselves on. So if someone is possessed, is there a way out of all of this? And the answer is absolutely. Demons have power. They can only be defeated by power. The power that defeats them is the power of God. And the ministry of exorcism is the way that we call upon the power of God. And in an exorcism, remember that Jesus is not a bystander. He is the main actor.
Okay.
Maybe I don't know enough about that story he told. I didn't really see the
Connection, neither.
Yeah, I didn't see how it was connected. This person they didn't say he was from a broken family. They say he was living in a graveyard. So like,
yeah, right. Yeah.
But it's a cool story nonetheless.
Yeah, it was a cool story. So anyway, that was it. So those were the eight ways that the devil can get a foothold.
Yes.
In your life via the Catholic Church. So an exorcist. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, what's so sad, Sarah, is he would never accept us
No.
helping him or being in that situation, which I find really sad.
Yeah, I'd accept his help.
Right, right. But he would not the other way, like it just
No.
wouldn't be helped. Very sad.
And again, it's just a very stratified, very formalized religion, you know, and so I don't think there's much really any getting past that. But it is interesting to see the commonalities between what he experiences and what we sometimes experience.
We as mediums. Mhm.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. We just thought we'd do something a little different. So there it is. Leave your comments. Tell us what you think. If you have something else you want to say about it, or was there something missing that you wanted to hear us talk about and it didn't come up? Again, like, subscribe, share with people. Anything else? Anything else you want to say?
No, I think we're good.
All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.